A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Some more today on a disturbing development we were talking about a little earlier this week. It comes out of Canberra, where a resident discovered racist neo-Nazi flyers in their letterbox disseminated by a group called the National Socialist Network. They were distributing a pamphlet titled Australia for the White Man. Now, it's good for us to talk about these developments, get some context where Christian thinking is on this level of extremism. Joshua Rowe is the ACL State Director for New South Wales and the ACT. Hey, Joshua, welcome back to 2020.
Neil, thanks for having me.
Josh, what's in this particular pamphlet that's so disturbing?
Well, there's clearly some commentary here around immigration, Neil, and immigration policy, and that is completely appropriate for us to have that kind of dialogue within a democratic country. However, this pamphlet itself does step right over the line, referring to immigrants and immigrant families as garbage or refuse that needs to be taken out of the community, referring to them once more again during the pamphlet as scabs. So this kind of divisive and really racist material is appalling, and it was quite disturbing when I saw it.
Is that a clue if you pick up a pamphlet and you start to see those sorts of criticisms, words like scabs and garbage? When you start to see that sort of thing, is that a clue that you may be reading something that's quite extreme?
Absolutely. I think that kind of language directed towards a certain people group is something that people should be appalled by. And yeah, if you're picking up material which is directing that kind of language to a particular subgroup in the community, then you should have concern immediately and be thinking very carefully about your engagement with that flyer, and especially the group who's distributing it.
Important to talk to you, Josh, with the Australian Christian Lobby, because sometimes people who talk about those sorts of conservative views or right-wing views, there are those perhaps on some further left positions that want to characterise everyone that has a conservative view as being extreme. How do you deal with the thought that you've got to distance yourself from some of these fairly unsavoury types of brochures?
Well, that's right, Neil. I mean, we can be caricatured by the left as radicals, and language is used in all kinds of ways to try and dismiss people and valid voices like ACLs within the community. But that's absolutely not true. There is that kind of caricature, and then there's real radicalism and extremism like we're seeing in this flyer. I mean, as a Christian lobby group, we believe that all people are created in the image of God, that we are called to love our neighbour. Jesus went to the cross so that all could have an opportunity to come to know him and to be saved by his grace. And we believe in a kingdom that transcends racial barriers. So we love our brothers and sisters, no matter whether they're from this country or another. And we have a great deal of compassion. And so ACL absolutely distances ourselves from this kind of rhetoric. And it's important to recognise that when people try and silo ACL in that way, it's actually often a tactic or a ploy to try and cancel our voice, which is a very valid and reasonable voice on issues like immigration.
Obviously, those who are putting out these sorts of flyers, and let's call it neo-Nazi, extreme right-wing rhetoric, who do you think they're fishing for? Is there a particular group in Australia that's maybe vulnerable to this sort of propaganda?
I think there is. I think it's those people who are feeling discontented in the current political climate. I think that they are also targeting people online who are finding themselves in online groups, sort of searching for answers and political dialogue around conversations like national identity, national security, but also immigration policies. Particularly, I think young men are impressionable in this space. A lot of them feel a sense of patriotism about their country of Australia. They want a clear national identity. They're also seeing the housing crisis within our society. They're seeing that there is, a lot of people teeming into Australia through migration, with arrivals over the last couple of years up over 1 million. And they're looking for dialogue and for conversation around this, but with a lot of censorship nowadays and there's not valid dialogue around the issue of immigration, a lot of those conversations are pushed into the dark. And it's in the dark where these bad actors, where these particular groups can begin to fish for those people who are looking for leadership and looking for conversations around this issue. Those are people like young men, people who find themselves on the internet looking for this kind of material. And the next thing you know, they are finding themselves in a group which is very radical and, in fact, dangerous for the community.
Josh, when we have such serious issues to deal with in our nation, and there is a real need for robust, respectful public debate around those things, and those who want to cancel you, those who want to shut you down, those who want to degrade you with this sort of name-calling, how do you think that the Christian actually responds by way of participating but resisting the lure of actually getting involved into the gutter, like some of these things that we might be seeing?
I think we need to demonstrate an image to the community as leaders how to have very reasonable and balanced conversations around topics like immigration. There is the reality that if immigration is done in an ideological way which doesn't have any limitation, all of a sudden you have so many more people populating the country, and that has impacts on things like housing. It has impacts on our national identity, the values that are deeply important to us as Australians, as well as the infrastructure within our communities, be it transport, the health system, and various other necessities for Australians. We've got to have these kind of conversations around that impact of getting immigration wrong. But at the same time, we have to recognise that it is important that we do open Australia's doors to those who are in need, to others who want to come and enjoy the benefits of our community. But it has to be done in a politically thoughtful way. It also has to be done in a way that is compassionate and open, but not to the extent that it compromises the safety and the provision of everyday services to Australians who are already present here and want to keep Australia the great country that it is. So we have to really demonstrate how to bring that good dialogue that is thoughtful and reasonable to the community, so that the next generation who's looking for answers and conversation around this sees that it can be done in a reasonable way and doesn't need to be pushed into the shadows.
Josh, we're headed for another federal election. It's not too far away now, and there's often times during a campaign season that leaders can get flowery, even insulting towards one another. Candidates who are up against each other in various electorates around the nation, they can get a little bit, on the side of maybe of, throwing and receiving all sorts of insults. What sort of thing, from the Australian Christian lobby point of view, would you hope from our candidates and members, our politicians, in the lead up to the coming election?
We have a term here, Neil, and it's play the ball, not the man. And so it's about focusing on the issues and having robust, good dialogue around those issues to produce the best outcome for the community politically. So our encouragement to the candidates is to spend less time in divisive character attacks and more time focusing constructively on dialogue and different points of argumentation around the actual political issue, so that we can find the best solutions for the Australian community. And we've put together a resource, Australia Votes, which will be available very soon to the community, which will provide this kind of information on a very broad range of political issues to inform the community, and specifically the Christian community, about the different positions from different parties on these issues. And we'll be focusing very clearly on their policy and not the people, because that is a really important way to inform the community without creating social division, Neil.
Playing the ball, not the man. Hey, just a quick opinion here from you for a moment. Do divisive character attacks actually fuel the sort of extremism that you've seen there in Canberra? Is there a fuel that's happening with the way we're not as friendly towards one another?
It absolutely does, Neil. It does. And because, again, there's not those conversations, importantly, around the issues, not the people, it drives people to other areas, looking for information and good debate and strong leadership in other places. And that is what increases social division. It increases that extremism and people following these different leaders on the extremities. And so what we need is better conversation and less divisive debate from more mainstream voices to ensure that people aren't being pushed out into extremism and radicalisation.
And of course, the election is coming, and you're going to be drawing attention, no doubt, to when these sorts of ugly scenes rear their head, perhaps with some reminders as to how Christians conduct themselves in the course of a robust debate during an election time. You've got an election website that is going to be very active. It's going to have where all of the candidates sit, australiavotes.org.au, and I'll point listeners to that because it's going to be a very, very important website to be able to see where the Christian commentary is from the Australian Christian lobby around all of the candidates on all of the sides. You can visit the ACL website, acl.org.au. Joshua Rowe is the ACL State Director for New South Wales and the ACT. Josh, thanks so much for another update today on 2020.
My pleasure, Neil.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.